Hello, my mindful meal preppers. My name is Em. This is Life's Table. We are going to be finishing off this set of meals and our first week of stress management with some coleslaw. There is something about good homemade coleslaw that does set it apart from the grocery store, and I think will make it more appealing for me to eat the rest of these days worth of cold cuts that I still have to go. I'm going to take this last little bit of today to finish the stress spectrum that we talked about yesterday, where you start in the blue, which is no stress, and that's not good. We move into the green, which is eustress, it's that good stress. And then something happens where we start noticing we are stressed out. So that's the yellow. And we will finish off today by talking about the orange, the red, and then reframing our mind and reframing our feelings about stress. So without further ado, let's tie back our hair if we have to. We'll put on an apron if we've got one, and let's get cooking good looking. There's so much to be learned today at Life's Table. Yay! So we're going to go ahead and we are going to get started with a veggie peeler, a cutting board, a knife, and of course our veggie scrap bag, my favorite beyond favorite thing. And we're going to do, I'll bring out my largest mixing bowl, second mixing bowl for the slaw itself. But first, we start by washing and peeling our cabbage. These outer layers, just go ahead and take them off because we don't need them. But inner layers are safe. And just so you're aware, if you are using a whole cabbage, you are welcome to use the whole cabbage and you'll just have a ton of coleslaw, and make sure that you're doubling whatever I say for the ingredients. But for those of you who only want to use half or even a quarter, do not wash what you will not use. If you put coleslaw in after having washed it, it's just gonna get soggy and moldy that much faster. So store it dirty and dry. I'm also gonna go ahead and wash my carrot. I will set this aside. Now, we find the head of our lettuce, which is down here at this base. You'll see this little nub in here, and I'm going to cut the cabbage into thirds. Okay, so that should have just about removed the whole head of the lettuce. I'll chop off this last little bit, boop, right there. This can go in the veggie scrap bag. Same thing with the other side, perfect. And then we have just the head here, which I will cut off this way. And now we just get to shredding our cabbage. We want this line here. And just make sure you chop very carefully because knives like to cut things down. So be careful, but nice thin little chops, just like this. And it'll naturally just break apart, just like that. So we already talked about the blue, we already talked about the green. We'll go ahead and start putting this into our bowl so that it's not making a huge mess. Let's talk now about what happens beyond the yellow. I realize that I'm stressed out, and that puts me into the yellow. There are things that I can do in the yellow that will help me to get back to the green. Things like go for a jog. But ultimately, those woo-saw strategies don't necessarily address the source of your stress head on. Sometimes the source of your stress is your supervisor. Maybe you just do not click. And they're not going to quit just because you don't like them. And you're not going to quit just because you don't like them. So you're just kind of stuck. So what do you just sit with that stress for days to weeks to months? Well, if you do that, that's kind of when you start approaching what we call the orange. And the orange it's more stress than you alone can manage. Something is going on that requires outside intervention, requires change to happen, and it's change that you yourself cannot alone bring about. And until you can find that help from others, be it another coworker, be it another supervisor on the team, be it HR, be it whoever, to help you deal with that stress, it's going to start creeping into other aspects and facets of your life. When we start staying up at night and losing sleep because of this impending thing that's happening, that's the orange. When you finally do get to sleep, but you have work dreams and they're awful, right? Fitful, stressful work dreams. We start noticing changes in our eating habits as well. Let me get a veggie peeler for my carrot. We notice changes in our eating habits. There are some of us who just get insatiably hungry. No amount of food is making me feel better. I feel hungry all of the time. And I would love to know, for those of you who do get more hungry when you're stressed, what are the foods that you crave? Because I know, at least for me, it's never healthy foods. I'm never craving a salad. I'm never craving coleslaw or vegetables. I want nothing healthy. And my justification for that is, well, I feel like garbage on the inside right now. Everything is garbage all around me. So let me just consume some garbage to really lean into it. I'm going to get my grater to get these carrots going. I'm going to do some bigger slices this time, but you could do the smaller one if you want like really fine grated carrot. Some of us, on the other hand, we don't get hungry at all, right? A whole day will go by and we'll realize, oh my gosh, I haven't eaten yet. Ultimately, though, the orange is not a fun place to be. And unfortunately, it's this really bad catch-22 where like we're so on that at some point we're like, I can't be on anymore. Burnout tends to happen in this phase, in this stage. This is no longer a job that I want to have. This is no longer a place where I want to be. Work is stressing me out, but I can't take out my stress at work. So I come home and I take out my stress here at home, which leads to fights and pushing people away. But unfortunately, when we are in the orange, this is when we need that support system more than we ever have before. I can deal with green and yellow on my own, but I hit orange, and whatever I'm dealing with, I need to call my mom, right? Or I need to start talking to the pastor at my church, for example, because I alone am not seeing a light at the end of this tunnel, and I alone need there to be a light at the end of this tunnel. Because here's what happens if we don't see the light at the end of this tunnel. We go ahead and just add this in. Beautiful little bright orange. I love carrot and what it does to my dishes. It just brightens them up so beautifully. Past the orange is when we get into the red. And this is when it is time for medical professionals to intervene. I am going to hurt myself. I'm going to hurt somebody else. Things are not okay. Whatever this stress is, it is taking such a toll on my mental health, on my physical health perhaps, that I'm contemplating things that I've never contemplated before. Like, I would rather just not be here. But unfortunately, is something that we do begin to contemplate and we do begin to consider when we are stressed, because as we've already discussed, our brain functioning changes when we are subjected to stress. We do not, in fight or flight mode, usually kick in and think with our logical brain, which means that when we are experiencing prolonged, what we call chronic stress, the prefrontal cortex shuts off and it is much more strongly emotion-based and survival-based. And my impulses and my survival strategies do not typically include things like, well, let's be logical and rational about this. I don't feel good. Nothing is making me feel better. Something has got to change. No one wants to see anyone else in the red. No one really wants to see you in the orange even, because that means that the stress that you are feeling is great enough that you're not seeing a way out for yourself. And that's horrible. To feel trapped, to feel burnt out, to feel exhausted, but you can't rest and you can't sleep because you're just back in whatever is stressing you out. And your mind is scrambling for a solution that it cannot seem to find. It's overwhelming, and truly, I hope that you all don't face the orange, and certainly that you don't face the red in your lives, but it happens. And so I think that this is a good place for us to talk about that. And what I want to do now, while we make our sauce for our coleslaw, is talk about another way to manage stress and manage our response to it. So that in the future, perhaps you will find yourself in the yellow. You might even find yourself in the orange, but you don't perceive it to be the horrible thing that you once did, or you perhaps do now. There is a phenomenal TED Talk on the internet. I think you can find it on YouTube even, by a wonderful woman named Dr. Kelly McGonigal. And I believe it's called How to Make Stress Your Friend. And she is an eloquent speaker. Please, please, please go and watch her video. Give it a like. I'm going to summarize it here. She cites a study that was done about people's perceptions of stress. We love to think about stress as though it is bad. We've talked about that. We talked about that in our first video. That it's not good and it's not bad, it just is. But we, for a very long time, have been very good at saying, no, stress is bad. You don't want to feel stress. Stress means that there's something wrong, something is going on. You should fear stress. You should avoid stress. Stress leads to illness. It leads to injury. Half a cup, just about. And this will go into the bowl. Boop. But at the end of the day, when stress is inevitable, and it just is, how do we set people up for success by saying, well, just don't be stressed, just don't subject yourself to that, whatever it is that's stressing you out, just stop being stressed. You got to work on that, you got to manage that. That's not helpful. And what it is doing is, in fact, encouraging us to not develop stress management strategies or stress management techniques. If the technique is just avoid it, that's not setting anybody up for success, because stress, like we said, is unavoidable. It's going to happen. So a study was done. You want 1 tablespoon of our apple cider vinegar. A study was done to see what would happen if, instead of telling you things like avoid stress, stress is bad, it's awful, it's terrible, what if I were to tell you stress is readiness? Stress is, we want 1/2 teaspoon of salt and then 3/4 teaspoon of lemon juice. All right. What if, instead of telling you stress is something to be feared and it's something to be avoided, the symptoms at least, the racing heart, the breathing faster, that narrowed focus, what if, instead of telling you to dread those feelings, I told you to appreciate them? Because at the end of the day, you wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be here if it weren't for those feelings. It's a state of readiness, right? Stress is what keeps us alive and has kept us alive for millennia. A little bit of pepper, boop, and we'll give this a mix to combine. What if I told you to look forward to stress, because it's your body's response to a challenge? It is your body rising to the occasion. It is your opportunity to seize something amazing and accomplish something great. It is your body saying, I'm ready. I may not feel ready, but it is, I'm ready. My heart is racing so that I can act. My breathing is increasing, which is getting oxygen to my system, to my brain, to my heart, to everywhere. I'm focusing my senses. I am sharpening my focus and concentrating. I'm ready. If I then equip you with that mentality and say, that's what I want you to focus on, and I then subject you to a stressful situation, it has an impact. The symptoms will still be there. Your heart is still going to pick up. Your breathing is still going to increase. But with your change and shift in mentality, what we find is it's no longer paralyzing. It's no longer extremely negative the way that we once thought it was. And instead, our body begins to handle it as if it were another emotion that causes your heart to increase. It causes your breathing to increase. Things like excitement, things like happiness. There are other emotions that we feel, much more positive ones, that elicit that same response from us. But because we associate that with positivity and dopamine and that release of those happy hormones, it's not a negative. If I tell you to think about stress and appreciate stress and the role that it's played in our survival, and we are here today because of stress, and this is your body telling you you are ready, people tend to perform better. People tend to have fewer health issues. Now, this is so much easier said than done, and I need to emphasize that. You have perhaps had negative affiliations with stress for decades. At least for me, 3 solid decades have been dedicated to stress is bad. Stress is bad for you. Stress makes me feel bad. I don't like stress. I avoid stress. I fawn. I flee. What have you. I think I might add a little bit of honey, okay? But if I change my perceptions after over a decade of having it be a certain type of way, it's way easier said than done because my default is still going to be stress is bad. But with time and with cognitive intentional overrides of no, stress isn't bad, it's a challenge and it's something for you to test yourself with. All right, so we pour this over our coleslaw now. It takes a lot of intervening to override what I have been thinking for decades now. But at the end of the day, it works, it's effective at helping us to better manage stress just by saying, you know what, stress is not that bad, it's actually almost good. And with time then, we get more comfortable with thinking these thoughts and we learn to override much faster these original thoughts that we once had. I'll come back over here so that you all can see a little bit better. And I want to hear from you all. I'm going to try this. I'm going to practice this, and here's how it goes. And here is what I'm finding. Here is what I'm seeing. Here's what I'm learning about myself. Changing that mentality and saying, okay, stress is a challenge for me to, an opportunity, not a challenge, right? An opportunity for me to rise to this occasion and prove myself and prove my worth. And here's how it has changed or has not changed my sentiments towards stress, okay? Our coleslaw is done. What I will say is coleslaw is one of those dishes where if you let it sit and rest for an hour or overnight even, you give it more time for the cabbage and the carrot to really absorb the sauce that it's in right now. It does actually taste better, or it will actually taste better tomorrow even than it does today. When you take it out tomorrow, give it a stir before serving to really get everything mixed up and combined. I believe that concludes everything that I wanted to discuss, at least for this first week of stress and stress management. I hope that you're enjoying it. I know I truly I am. But with that said, enjoy your coleslaw. Thank you for coming on this journey with me. Thank you for taking care of you today. I hope you enjoy. Bon appetit. Hello everyone. It is the next day. I am finally taking my lunch and I've been thinking about my homemade coleslaw all morning. We'll go ahead and we'll try some of this coleslaw now that we've let it sit overnight and really soak in the flavors. Yep, it's really good. Thank you for making this with me. Bon appetit.